night is the Rangers Journal night.
Good evening, Internet. This is your Rangers Journal podcast for Tuesday, the 1st of July. We are well and truly into the summer now, as hopefully soon enough Rangers transfer activity gets a little bit of a kickstart with a potential departure, but I'm sure that might get mentioned at one point or two. Joining me to go through tonight's pod is, first of all, Richard, all the way from Germany. How you doing, pal?
I'm very well, mate. Yourself?
Can't complain. Like you say, we were just talking off camera about the weather. It's the summer's here, but I don't think we've had much of the sun today. It seems to have went away again.
I know, not quite adapted yet over here either.
Joining as well is Colin. Colin, how's things, mate?
Hi, good, Ross. Yeah, I'm up in Storney, Isle Lewis, so we've had the sunshine today, which we don't often get. So good to be with you guys. Looking forward to the chat.
Absolutely fantastic, and bringing his own melancholic sunshine to every pod, of course, is Doug. Doug, how you doing, mate?
Not too bad, not too bad. Dundee failing to live up to its moniker as Scotland's sunniest city today. I have to say, everyone was posting all their weather app sunny pictures, and I was just looking at mine with a little drab rainy thing going on. Sad times, but happy now that I can talk about Rangers. That's all the sunshine I need.
That's all the sunshine we need, especially Rangers with a fresh start, and that's obviously going to be what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to discuss the manager. We're going to talk about this man, Russel Martin, who is, of course, the 20th permanent manager of Rangers Football Club. He's now been in the job for 3 weeks or so. Richard, obviously very, very early days, but he's ticked a lot of boxes in terms of the things that he said, in terms of the things that he's claimed that he wants to do for the football club. But what's been your initial impression of him, considering he's not perhaps been the fan favourite?
Ever since he joined the club, I've been looking into a lot more detail about what he's done, what his perception was with the fans at the other clubs that he's been at, what his style of play was, and it's pretty obvious. It's been well documented. You know, high press, and you know, holding the ball as much as possible, possession-based football essentially. Right, is what we're going to get, what we expect to see. Hopefully, he can either adapt the players that we've got to his style or bring his players in, which we're all looking forward to see. My first impressions, though, to answer your question, I've been impressed with what he's got to say. From what I've seen in the videos, it looks good. The intensity level seems to be there, but it's early days. I'll say it's early days, but it's looking promising so far. I like what I see, but results will be the big thing.
Results will, and I think that's always the standout moniker for every Rangers manager is come the end of the season, if they're holding up big shiny things, that's all we really care about. Colin, the thing that Russel Martin, that appealed to the Rangers board about Russel Martin was obviously not his footballing background, nothing to do with even his win percentages, his statistics. It was about his philosophy and about the idea that he believes that he has as a football manager. He talked a lot in his initial interview about high press, high octane football, high intensity football, highly passionate football. Do you think that's something that kind of really should resonate with the Rangers support based on the way that we kind of like to express ourselves as a passionate, intense fan base?
So the short answer to that is yes. But it's hard for me to come on and, I was one of the guys who didn't want Russel Martin. I think a large part of the fan base didn't want him. But this time, unlike previous managerial appointments, we haven't got the person we wanted. I mean, I think generally people wanted Giovanni and Bronkhorst. We then wanted Philippe Clement. They didn't work. We've been crying out for a guy who comes in with a clear style of play, who's attacking, who presses high, and who wants to dominate games of football from start to finish, whether it's at home or away. Now, we've got that, and some of us are still not happy. So I think we have to be patient. This is what we were looking for as a fan base, and we are funny. We are a funny fan base at times. We've been crying out for it. Now we have it. We've got to give it a chance. So you're right. He's all about controlling games of football through pressing and through possession. That's it. That message will be getting drilled into the players every single day at training, and it's going to be interesting to see how it develops. Because if it works, I think it's going to work extremely well domestically. Europe, possibly not so much, But if you look back over the last few seasons, we've thrived in Europe. And I think the reason for that is we haven't had a clear style of play in possession. We've had a clear style of play in how we style of play in terms of what we want to do without the ball, and we've counter-attacked teams in Europe. But when it comes to it domestically, I keep using this phrase. We hear it all the time: the low block. When teams have 11 men behind the ball, we've struggled to break them down, whether that's away from home or at Ibrox. So this dominant pressing style of play, playing out from the back, I think it's going to work really, really well domestically. There will be teething problems. I have no doubt that the first few games, there probably will be mistakes. We'll be watching from behind the sofa at points, but I think it will come good.
We all want it to come good. I think that's one of the things that you can throw a lot of criticism at the Rangers support for a lot of things, but if you give us something to believe in, we'll believe it. Doug, Colin made a great point there, just at the start there, when he was talking about the fans were given prior what they wanted. We wanted Van Bronckhorst. It made a lot of sense. When it came down to Philippe Clement, or if you believe the media, Frank Lampard, and I think basically Frank Lampard was used as a litmus test to say, do you want him? And the fans resoundingly said no. Philippe Clement was given the job. This is now a new board that has came in and made decisions that might not be the most popular decision, but they believe that it's the best to give them success. Russel Martin is a man with a football philosophy that is about forward pressing football, something that we as a support have asked for a long time. We've had it in the past. Well, we've seen it in Scotland in the past with other managers from other places, and it can be successful. So why do you think that Russel Martin kind of, despite having those attributes as a football manager, he just seemed to have such negative connotations with him?
He just wasn't the sexy choice, really, I think, for a lot of fans. And a lot of fans, I think, put a lot of stock in his stint in the Premiership with Sunderland. Not Sunderland, Southampton, sorry. Where, they obviously didn't do well. And he obviously ended up losing that job. And I think a lot of fans have put basically their whole stock based on that part of his career and kind of ignoring the rest of it. The season beforehand that he had with Southampton was excellent. He broke numerous records with them in terms of records for them. I think it was 25, 26 wins in a row, or undefeated was a record for them. And he set league records for things like possession and a number of passes and stuff like that. And he did well at both his clubs prior to that as well. So I think the key thing is that he's learned from the issues that he found in the Premiership, because that's also where I think a lot of people are drawing the inference that he's not going to do well in Europe. The idea that, well, that was a higher level of quality and he didn't do well there, so therefore he'll not do well in Europe. I'm not quite as convinced by that, because I don't think the gap between us and a lot of the teams will play in Europe, depending on, I say this, depending on whether we get into the Europa League or Champions League. But taking it on the Europa League, which is where we've been, I don't think the gaps are necessarily as big between most of the teams we meet, and the gaps that were existing at the time between Sunderland. I keep saying Sunderland. My manager at work is a massive Sunderland supporter. I think that's why. Southampton and some of the big teams that sort of did them over. But yeah, and then obviously, he was up against a guy whose last name was Ancelotti, who, his dad's one of the greatest managers of all time, probably, I would say, top 5, maybe even top 3. So, I think it was an easy one for fans to go all in on one another. I wanted Ancelotti as my first choice. I wasn't against Russel Martin in any way. I think I was also like, oh, this is the sexy option. But I'm quite happy with the choice. I think, to be honest, one of the things I liked was I think there were a lot of similarities between the two of them. They are both heavy on philosophy. They like to play good football, possession-based football, on the front foot. And so to me, that was a sign of something that we also haven't seen in the past, which was a bit more of a joined-up thinking. Previously, we've had a few managers we've been looking at that were like totally different in style, which kind of suggests, well, you maybe don't have that overarching philosophy, which is something we were looking at. So I think that was a good thing. But yeah, I think like I say that the main thing was just you had two options. One had a big name attached, was a bit of a sexier name, and then the other one, had, for a lot of people, just had this record of he failed in the Premiership miserably, but where I think there's more to it than that, and so he kind of got the short end of the stick.
I think so. I think he's probably been unfairly tarred with a lot of the things that people only see small parts of his career and his managerial career in isolation. Richard, obviously we're talking there about him not being the sexy option or being the popular option, but when we had pods before talking about managerial discussions, I was always a fan of trying to find a manager who ticks the most boxes, because we were never going to get somebody who comes in and gives us everything, because we wouldn't be able to afford them. But what we were looking for was a manager who ticked the boxes that previously we've not been able to tick, talking about intense, high pressing, relentless football, which is, I think, something we were really wanting. And Russel Martin has always been open and honest about that's what he wants. Perhaps his teams haven't always been able to give him that due to circumstances, due to the differences between the level of teams that he's managed. He's spoke very openly and very honestly about him being, expected to just survive at MK Dons and at Swansea City. But then when he obviously comes to Southampton, and for the first time in his career, he's expected to win. He's expected to take them up. He's expected to compete against the teams at the top side of the top end of the Championship, which of course we all know is a notoriously unpredictable league at times. Can he take from that experience, being one of the top dogs in Scotland, that he actually ticks more boxes than we were maybe expecting, just because of the way that he wants to implement teams within games that they really should be winning?
I think so. If you look at his style of play, or what he said he wants to play, it's exactly what we need for every game that we have in Scotland outside of playing Celtic. Right? And even you would argue the games that we play against Celtic, we want to take the game to them. So let's play our game and make them adapt. Right? Is that the gold-plated solution for games against them? I think what he's had at his other clubs, at Southampton in the Championship, it's an absolutely difficult league to compete in. He had a little bit of fortune, but he managed to get them up. Whether or not he had the players to implement the style that he wanted to really implement and to go with, I'm not 100% sure. I know he certainly didn't in the Premier League for whatever reason, whether the teams were just better, the players weren't able to implement what he was trying to do. We don't know, but looking at it from Rangers' perspective, I think the style of football that he wants to play is exactly what we need, right? And Scottish football, how Rangers are going to have to play, the teams that are going to come up against, the way they're going to play against us, his type of football that he's played throughout his managerial career, and what he's actually stated he wants to play is, to use your terminology, ticking that box at what we need. We also know that the new board, the style of football that they want us to play, but also the player development that Russel Martin's been attributed with as well is quite key to that as well. So to answer your question, I think there's a lot of boxes that have been ticked, not only for us as fans, for Russel Martin to suit Rangers, despite the fans not really wanting him. I think now that fans have probably had a good look at him, now that he's here, we need to accept it. So they've went, all right, what's this guy all about? They've had a look at it. They've probably heard from people from other clubs and thought, right, okay, this guy might actually do the job. He wasn't a sexy choice, wasn't the first choice for many fans, but I think when they look at it, he actually might just surprise us all.
That's the thing, is I think we're nothing if not just he's here now, so he's got to be the guy. Colin, Richard there's talking about obviously how do we obviously, he obviously ticks a lot of boxes, but until you really see it in action, it's hard for us to make any sort of judgment. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to see it, but today, maybe around about an hour and a half ago, Rangers released the training video, which is probably the first time we've really had an opportunity to have any sort of insight into the training been carried out so far, bearing in mind we are only a week into pre-season. If you haven't had the opportunity to watch it, everybody who's watching, please go. It's on Rangers socials, it's on YouTube, Twitter. Go and check it out, because it might actually just give you a little bit of a, do you know what, perhaps this might be what we're looking for. Did you have the opportunity to watch it, Colin? And was there something out of it that kind of stood out? For me personally, it was the intensity, the work on pressing, and bearing in mind that they are only a week into pre-season, so you can't go gung-ho, but it was something that ticked a lot of boxes for me.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like you say, Ross, for all those guys watching, it's definitely worth going and finding that link and taking a look. It's only about 8-9 minutes. I think the the picture that I've still got in my head from that wee video is Danilo on the deck, absolutely flakers after a running drill, and yeah, intensity is the word. And I think we're going to hear that a lot from him in his press conferences. I think we're going to hear it from the players. I think they're all going to be talking about this intensity, with and without the ball. And it always goes back to, we're talking about Russel Martin here, we're talking about a style of play. Ultimately, as Richard said earlier on, we just want a winning team on the park. But it is interesting. This is kind of reflective of what we're seeing across Europe now. Clubs, big clubs, are appointing managers based not on what they've won, but on their style of play. What are their principles of play? What are they getting out of the players? I think, I don't want to spring too far off the topic, but Vincent Kompany going to Bayern Munich after getting relegated with Burnley was one that just came completely out of left field. I mean, that was unbelievable to be appointed Bayern Munich manager after getting relegated from the Premier League. So big clubs are doing this now. They are appointing managers based on their style of play. I remember when Gerrard came in, you guys will all be the same, the guys watching will all be the same. When Gerrard came in, it wasn't perfect, first of all, and a lot of us forget that. Yes, we won 55, but there was teething problems. There were plenty of teething problems in the first couple of seasons. But you could see that there was a plan. And step by step, we were making progressions. You could see where we were heading. That's what Russel Martin's got to do from the start. Because as you said, Ross, some parts of the fan base will be against him from the start. I would love it if all of us were right behind him. It won't be the case, but he's got to show concepts and principles and progression from the very start. Does that mean winning every single game? No. Obviously, we'd all love that, but you've got to see that there's a plan in place and that the players understand what they've been asked to do. And from that video in training, it certainly looks like he's making it absolutely clear from day one that they're going to have to run, that they're going to have to fight. And these are basics. These are absolute fundamental basics that you require from any team in order to go and win games. So, yeah, for me, it's a great video. It gives us an insight. Obviously, they're not going to show everything. I didn't see much of what we're doing in possession. There was a lot of the out of possession stuff. And certainly there was no holding back from the likes of Insiala and Ross McCausland. They were flying into tackles. So hopefully nobody's gone near Ridvan, because I'm sure Hammy will pop.
God, hopefully, if we've got to spend another season with more guys in the treatment table after playing intense football, then honestly, God help us all. Doug, Colin again just makes a superb point there. It's about buy-in from the support, and it's about buy-in from the players as well. One thing that has been mooted about Russel Martin very, very positively, including from someone who might get a mention a little bit later on the show, Joe Rothwell, has spoke very, very highly about his man management, has spoke about the way that he treats players and the way that he presents himself as a football coach and as a football manager. If you get the buy-in from the players, you'll get the buy-in from the fans, because if you go out there and perform, the support will get behind you, and there'll be bumps in the road. I think that's to be expected, but I always remember, it's obviously, I don't want to talk about it too much, but I do always remember thinking back to the early days of Steven Gerrard and the first game against FK Scoopy in the Europa League, and we just looked like a football team. Even the embryonic stages of a football team, even at that point, we looked like players that knew what they were doing. And you could say a lot of things and throw a lot of criticisms at Gerrard and at Gerrard's teams, and I've been very open and honest about it, and I didn't want it back. But you could never take away the fact that the players the players didn't look like they knew what they were doing. at times, it was night and day compared to what we've had. You will get that with the Russell Martin team. I believe you will have players that will know what they're doing, and it's so important for buy-in. And I think that if we get into the kind of first couple of weeks of the season and we've got players looking like they know what they're doing, the support will buy in. How important do you think the buy-in really is from the players, who you could say at times have perhaps not been 100% all in on previous managers?
Yeah, I think from the player point of view, I don't necessarily think it's so much buy-in myself as just the ability of the manager to motivate them appropriately. I do think that's something that Gerrard had that was just infinitely better than the managers that have followed him. Gerrard was that more traditional totemic sort of figure, the kind of figurehead manager. He always had his team and they did a lot of the tactical stuff. But he was the kind of the figurehead, the one who people could turn to and look and respect immediately because of who he was. And that's a bit more of the traditional style. And I think what we've lacked since then is the ability to balance those two factors, which is having that man management, the ability to lead men, and then the tactical side. Gio was excellent tactically a lot of the time, but I don't think he had that same we can take on the world attitude. I always refer back to his first press conference after we lost to Ajax in the Champions League. We basically just said we can't compete because we've not got the money. He just flat out said it. And to me, you can't come out, maybe you think that to yourself privately, but you can't be saying that publicly or to your players. You have to be saying, this is difficult, but we can do something if we try. And, you have to build the belief of your team when you're going into big challenges. You see it all the time. I highly doubt the Queen's Park manager was sitting there going, it's Rangers, don't bother yourself, that we're never going to win this. He'd have G'd them up and got them going for the game, and they won. And that's amazing for them, because that's the equivalent. That was the equivalent of us in the Champions League from their point of view. If you have belief, you can do these things. Beale was the same. He just totally collapsed. And Clement, I think again, he had a tactical plan, and he fell down both on failure to motivate and then failure to adjust his plan when he was going wrong. So I think a big thing will be, like you say, people have talked up Russell Martin's man management. If he can get the players built up and motivate them at the points where they need motivation, everyone can get motivated for an Old Firm. That's a huge football match viewed around the world. Everyone can get G'd up for European games because footballers relish the big games and the big competitions. The bread and butter is the manager motivating you to go to St Mirren when it's pouring with rain and you've just come off a hard shift against Fenerbahce and your legs hurt and you feel a bit tired. That's when the manager makes his money, because he gets you back up to feeling, actually, no, yeah, I'm up for this game. Let's go out and put four past these guys, and charge towards a title. That's where the manager, for me, makes his money, in those moments, because as I say, players can get themselves up for the big games, and we saw it all the time. You would see us play horrendously against domestic teams and then go and play a stunner in Europe or beat Celtic. So for me, that the proof's in the pudding right there. So that'll be a key thing. Where the buy-in, I think, comes in terms of proper buy-in, is the fans aspect, and Martin will have a bit of an uphill battle there, because he's starting a step behind, because he's not a popular appointment. He made himself even less popular when he came on and was ratified Tavernier as captain straight away, and everyone was obviously against that. However, he's slightly turned that around with his signing since, or prospective signing, with Joe Rothman coming through the door, signing a right back who's coming in, who is coming to play football, signing someone who's known for taking good free kicks. Fans are starting to see a little bit of progression, and I think you're seeing, I'm already seeing it on Twitter, some people turning around going, oh, we're not going to see him anymore, and they're super happy with this, and that's getting a bit of that buy-in. The main buy-in, though, will be, like you say, seeing an identity on the pitch, seeing something building up. I do think there's been a little bit too much focus on the possession play bit. Some people think he's going to be Gio Mark II, just keeping the ball all the time and not doing anything with it. But one of the key components about Martin's game that I think is kind of overlooked is that it's a positional game as well. It's heavy on the positional play. It's all about keeping possession so that you can find that free man by getting the extra guy in a position that he shouldn't be, by moving people about the pitch, and that's where you get your spaces, create your spaces, and find people that you wouldn't necessarily find. And I think that if that works, that will be the difference. Is that we'll start to break lines and things by having that extra man. And if people start to see that, they start to see a transition, they start to see something building, then they'll start to come on side, and that'll then give him the time he needs to fully implement his system. He also needs to avoid the stupidity that Clement did, which was give himself an artificial timeline. Clement came in and said, "Oh, you'll see the real Rangers in October." Horrible idea. You've set yourself a deadline that you didn't need to do. Let it happen as it happens, and as long as we see that, then fans will get time, because that happened with Gerrard. Like you said, there were bumps in the road, but we could see a progression. We could see something building, and so the fans gave him the time. He got put more time than probably any Rangers manager in history will ever get. 3 years to win something, but he got that time and he got to his goal. And if we could see something similar with Martin, ideally in a slightly more truncated timeline, then as I say, he'll get that buy-in and he'll get to where he wants to go.
Yeah, absolutely will. And like you're absolutely spot on that. If we go out the first couple of games of the season and we look like a team that know what they're doing, then you'll get buy-in. And that's just leads me perfectly on to what I wanted to discuss next. Richard, I'll come to you first. This is obviously the fixture list for Rangers in the 25-26 season. Just wanted to kind of focus especially on the first 4 or 5 games there. We've got a lot of fixtures within that are very varied and will probably give us a little bit of an indicator onto how the Rangers team over the next 6 or 8 weeks will start to look, bearing in mind that we do have the Panathinaikos games before that. We play them on the 20, I believe it's the 22nd and the 29th of July. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Apologies, the 23rd and the 30th of July. That'll be the first time we see the right of what the real, don't say the real Rangers, but what a Russel Martin Rangers can be like. But you look at the first 3 fixtures there. We have Motherwell away, we have Dundee at home, and we have St Mirren away. That's 3 games that if you can go out and set a precedence and at least show how much we've changed or how much he's been able to change the squad positively, you're going to get buy-in within that, because that's 3 games that last season we found extremely difficult. I know Dundee away was a really tricky tie for us. Remember the 4-3 game where Cyril Dessers had 45 shots on target. With Motherwell away, where we drew and we were 2-0 down, and also St Mirren, who I believe beat us twice. So these are the games you've got to start winning, and if he can start off with that, then surely to God, that's the kind of start you want to even just show that that's different levels of teams that we can break down.
Well, those 3 fixtures in particular are the difference between us last season. Essentially, they're the games that we broke down where we failed to pick up the points last season. So getting 9 points on the board straight away not only will give Martin the buy-in that he needs. That's one factor, right? Just to follow on from Doug's point, getting the points is the main point, okay, or the main aim. Sorry, not main point. But also it's the style of performances. That's what we're going to be looking for. That's what's going to be scrutinised. But unfortunately, that's going to take time in order to build a team, in order to get players to change his way of playing. Also, whether or not the players that we have at the start of the season are going to be capable of doing that in the positions, we don't know. We all hope. This is the first time we've had a head coach, not a manager. That's what he's there to do. So he's there to get the best out of the players and make and provide the attributes for those players to play the way he wants to play. The first 3 games in particular, whether or not we're going to be able to see all of that, I'm not so sure. There's the transfer window is not long open, so we don't know who's going to come in. We're hoping, obviously, all the players that are going to come in are going to be able to play to his style, and the ones that are there that hopefully we keep. are going to be able to adapt to it as well. But the big thing, getting that buy-in from the fans, what they're going to want to see is an improvement from last season. All right, you could say, it can't get any worse. Well, I don't think it can. But what we're going to want to see is these sort of games that we are not just winning, but we're actually controlling the games. We're not, coming away and scraping a win, which happened a lot last season in these sort of games. There was only a few where we ran out comfortably. Going into these games, 9 points, especially leading up to the Celtic game, give us that confidence. It might not be the polished article with regards to our style of play with players that we've got. It's highly unlikely that it will be, but that will give us the buy-in that he's looking for. And also with that, there's a couple of other factors that Russel Martin's going to need. And just following on from Doug's point, as I said, it's not just the case of the style and getting the points on the board, but it's not hampering himself the way that Clement did with, for example, saying you'll see the team in September or things. But it's also not making excuses. Not just saying, it was a great game because we had 72 shots on target, but it was 1-0, 0-0. Was it up in Ross County, I think, up at Dingwall? I'm pretty sure we had loads of shots, but still didn't come away with the points. None of that. We just say it as it is. If we don't win, we're poor. Say it. Don't make things. Don't look for excuses. Do that. You'll get the buy-in, and that's what he needs to give himself the time as a buy-in, and he needs to earn that his way, but also it needs to be on the park too.
It does. It's got to be. I think it's going to be a little bit of a kind of double-edged sword. Colin, trying to kind of avoid the elephant in the room here, but obviously you can see there the 31st of August we play Celtic at Ibrox. That's obviously the litmus test for any Rangers manager. It's not been a fixture that's been particularly bad to us over the last year or so. I think obviously last year we started off very, very poorly, losing 3-0 at Parkhead, but then from then on we were probably the better team overall against Celtic. Obviously you can talk about the League Cup final at the cows come home, but apart from that, we beat them 3-0 at New Year. We went 3-2 at Parkhead, and then we draw 1 each in a game at the end. It was just an end of season game. But I think both teams would have just happily taken the 1-1 and just not had to play at all. That's not the Celtic game hasn't been the issue for us over the last few years, but Russel Martin still needs to win it, doesn't it? He's still got to be turning up and beating them, even if the first 3 games don't go the way that we want, despite the fact that if, say, in a hypothetical scenario that Richard spoke about there, that if we're not good against Motherwell, say, for instance, or we drop points away at St Mirren, we still need to go and beat Celtic come hell or high water, don't we?
Yeah, we do. You look at these fixtures, and I don't want to be disrespectful, but Motherwell away, given we knew we didn't win the league last year, we knew we were going to be away from home in the first game. You could have had Hearts away, you could have had Hibs away. We've had Aberdeen away on the first day, I think, in one of Gerrard's seasons. I think that was 55 season, actually. So in terms of the games you could have had away from home to start off the season, Motherwell is far from the worst. We've got an excellent record there. As you say, ideally, we've got 9 points into that Celtic game on the 31st of August. I've got a funny feeling that St Mirren game away from home and that the third game is going to be the first game where we're looking at this Russel Martin team and saying, what have we got? Because, as you said, we've got a terrible record there over the last few years. They will get in our faces. It's a smaller pitch. The crowd on top of you. I have no doubt that they will try and press us. If we're playing off the back, they will try and press us. So that one is going to be a real test. What we cannot do is be 4, 5, 6 points behind heading into September. And it feels like the last few seasons, that's what we've had. Heading into mid-September, we've given ourselves an uphill task immediately from the off. That cannot happen. As Richard said, we're here talking about his tactics and how that's going to be implemented and how long it's going to take. He has to find a way to win games of football whilst implementing that, whilst implementing these tactics. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Obviously, ideally, we've got 9 points on the board. We head into that Celtic, full Ibrox. We get right behind them and we win that game. All of a sudden, everyone's on board. We're flying, and the confidence will just grow and grow. Obviously, we haven't mentioned the European games. There'll be European games sandwiched in amongst all of that, which will have an impact. It's really hard to tell what kind of squad we're going to have even at the beginning of August for that first game. In an ideal world, again, we've said it on previous podcasts, in an ideal world, we'll have 7 or 8 guys in. But the reality with that is they are not going to be settled at that point. And, Martin's tactics are very specific. He's demanding of players. Everybody has to play their role or it breaks down. It is risky. We know that. He plays out from the back. So it's going to take time to bed these players in. Now, I'm not for 1 second saying that the players that are here at the moment should be getting dibs on being in the team, because a lot of them have shown that they are not good enough. And I don't want to get too negative, but that is the reality. You could list off 7, 8 players that should be out the door. So we need a big rebuild. We know that, but it's going to take time. So he has to find a way to get points on the board early whilst implementing this new tactic. But I'm pretty confident. I'm pretty confident by the Celtic game we'll have seen signs. But the first couple of away games, big tests.
Massive tests. And we're talking, and we always say that every game at Rangers is a big game, but what I think is very, very apparent about that is that's the first 4 games there are 4 very, very different games to what you would expect over a season. Before you would look at it and go, Motherwell will play 10 men behind the ball, Dundee will play 10 men behind the ball, St Mirren will play 10 men behind the ball. But over the last few seasons, that's not been the case. Motherwell, who are under new management after their very, very strange appointment of Kevin Wimmer, who was only there for 12 games, beat Rangers and then left. We don't really know what was involved there. They're under new management. Dundee, who were a very, very progressive, very attacking team under Tony Docherty, have decided to hire Stephen Presley. No, I don't understand it either. And St Mirren, who've had a lot of success, been very, very good under Stephen Robinson. We know he's a very attack-minded manager. And then obviously Celtic as the litmus test. Doug, Colin says there that he's talking about that we have to get results whilst implementing the style. Does there come a point where you maybe have to look at a game and go, we're really early into the season, we can't afford to fall behind, it's just about getting the results? Or is implementing the style in real life game scenarios more important at this stage? Is the long run about the way that the team wants to play and the way the team wants to express itself more important within the first 46 games?
If we were supporters of almost any other club in the world, the obvious answer would be the long game. But we're not supporters of any other club in the world. We're supporters of Rangers. And so the answer is both at the same time and nothing less. But in reality, I do think that we need to be wary about going too crazy if there is a loss or a draw in some of the early games. At the same time, you can't fall too far behind too early, because otherwise, as I say, he's already got a large amount of or significant amount of the fan base who are sceptical to start with, and so that will only increase that pressure, which therefore makes the goal of building for the long term more difficult. It's difficult to do, but I mean, in some ways, you have to kind of just divorce what's happened before and try and look at it as freshly as possible. As some of these, Motherwell have a brand new manager, so we don't know how they'll play compared to how they played last year. We've got a brand new manager, so we don't know how our team will react to to teams that they were good or bad against last year. A lot of our significant players have left. Our core creative players, bar one, have all left the team. So we're going to be a different team. Last year with St Mirren was a bit of an anomaly. They hadn't beaten us in the league prior to that since 2011. So, the fact that they managed to get 2 wins out of 4 last season was like a complete anomaly for them. So while I still expect it to be tough because they'll build belief from that, they're going to be facing a completely different Rangers. So I think we have to just try and, as I say, take it from as fresh a start as possible and not carry that baggage in, because it's the baggage that makes the pressure the worst. The fact that fans are looking at it from the point of view of, it's the same, it's just the same again, and we have to look at it from, well, it's not the same again. It's new team, new management structure, now new owners, new hierarchy, new CEO, new, it's pretty much new everything top to bottom now, which is what people have wanted. So I think we have to give them the benefit of the doubt and say, right, well, we also have to draw a line then and go, right, this is a new era, a proper new era. And so we have to try and park that baggage a little bit. And, if he does lose to St Mirren or draws, has a stuffy game and it doesn't look good, that we don't just immediately go, it's the same as it has been, this is all terrible. And we just go, okay, fine, the other 2 games were fine. This, this happens, and then let them try and do that build, because ultimately it is the long term that is the most important. We need to build towards being a sustainable team, being a team that can grow and that can be built upon. Because if we continue to just be reactive like we have been, then we'll just keep repeating this cycle over and over and over and over again, which, as I say, I don't think we will from this point, because we do have this whole new structure now, new approach to things. So I do think we'll see something fresh, and we will see a difference in the team. And that's something that I think we haven't, as I say, we haven't had that sort of unique level of freshness since Gerrard came in, and he sort of totally changed things. The team, we had a team that came in that looked super fit, and we started to see this unique style of play that we hadn't really had before. I think we will see things like that again this time, because Clement came in and he talked a big game about, I'm going to solve all the problems with the fitness and the injuries, but it didn't really happen. Our club doctor's retired. It's changes everywhere. Fresh things everywhere, fresh ideas everywhere. So I do think we will see that. And so what we have to do is do our part in that and bring a fresh approach and go, okay, right, let's invest in this. Like you said earlier, let's buy into this and not just immediately do what we do. As difficult as it is, and I'll probably do it myself as well, it's when you've hit that first hurdle and just throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Can I just, sorry to interrupt, Ross, can I just add to that from what Doug's saying? You're right, there's a lot of changes in the club this year. New boards, new owners, new manager, new players, it's brilliant. But what's not going to change is the fans' expectations. They're not going to change at all. So as much as saying about not panicking if we drop points at St Mirren, you're right, let's not panic. But if we drop points at St Mirren and lose to Celtic, the next drop points, that's a crisis. So he really needs to avoid that. Right? And he needs to, I'm not going to say that he has to win every game, but the fans' expectations aren't going to drop. As much as we want to give him time to do what he needs to do, where he's going to get the time, if he's not winning, we're going to have to see an improvement on the pitch and the performances. Right? So as much as there's a lot of change at the club, but for the fans, there's not going to be a lot of change. Those expectations are still going to be there.
Yeah,
there's
you're right,
another.
Richard.
On you go, Colin.
So I was going to say it's absolutely right, and we're talking about players' ability, we're talking about tactics. The mindset of the players is just as important. They need to learn that, like you say, Richard, after a couple of defeats, it's a crisis at Rangers. It's not like playing for any other team. So I have no doubt that Russel Martin, I'm guilty of it as well. We're talking about what he can't afford in the first few games. I have no doubt that in training, behind the scenes with the players, he will be constantly reinforcing the positives. What do we want to do? Not what do we want to avoid doing? And that's important because they need to get off to a positive start, not just in terms of performances, not just in terms of getting points on the board, but mindset. For the new guys coming in, they need to learn straight away what it means to play for Rangers, because it is totally different. You take Lyle Cameron, for example. He's played for Dundee. He's done really well. Goals, assists. It's going to be a shock to him. He's going to have guys around him telling him immediately what it means to play for this club, because the expectations of the fans, it's off the scale. So, and that will be from day one. So, like you say, Richard, 2 defeats, it's a crisis at Rangers. Can't afford it. Got to get going early.
I think the other two points as well that to bring in, specifically because we're talking about the matches and how they run together. All being well, we've got 2 more rounds of Champions League qualifiers that we'll be fitting in amongst these games as well. So it's not. We're not just going to be going Motherwell, Dundee, St Mirren, Celtic. You've got all these another 4 matches potentially, and even if it's not the Champions League, you've got Europe. There'll be at least one round of qualifying at the Europa League to do, depending. So you've got all that, potentially something like almost 20 matches in this first clump of games before the window shuts. Because obviously the transfer window's open through all these games up to the Celtic match. So not only are you building a team, building the team you've got and putting in your tactics and everything else, but you're potentially going to have players coming in bit by bit during this time as well. That's the other thing. We're all talking about we want to get players in as soon as possible, and that's true. But we've ultimately still got, a whole 2 entire months of transfer window. So we probably will see players coming in and indeed leaving during that time, which is going to affect things. So we'll have to allow for a little bit of inconsistency, because there's going to be potentially inconsistency in the team. We could start Panathinaikos, and I apologise for the nightmares I'm about to give. We could start Panathinaikos with Robin Proper and Ben Davies as our centre backs, and then the two of them could be out the door before the second leg. That. So you could be changing entire sections of the team depending on what happens. So we'll have that to contend with as well.
I can't believe you didn't even bring up the fact that we could be starting against Panathinaikos with James Tavernier. You think Robin Proper will cause divide if James Tavernier starts against Panathinaikos? Half the support will lose the proverbial. Richard, just to wrap up here, we're obviously talking about the buy-in for the players and how do they implement this going into the next set of games. We play Club Brugge in a friendly on Sunday, and that's going to be the first opportunity that the support will get to see any vision whatsoever of a Russel Martin team. Whilst there's obviously no significance to the game whatsoever, we lost to TNS in a behind closed door game on Saturday, and to say the reaction to that was negative is probably a little bit of an understatement. Does that again just probably highlight more a point, especially the point that Colin makes, that we're Rangers. We don't care who we're playing, what we're playing them at, whether it's football, chess, tiddlywinks, water balloon fight. We need to win. Come hell or high water, we need to win the games of football. So do you know what I'm saying? Or can we need to take the positives out of these games? That obviously, just saying we play Club Brugge on Sunday. If we go out there and we actually look the part and we maybe get beat, does that give you more buy-in for the support?
I think the result about TNS and the way that social media blew up about it, I think that just proves the point about fans' expectations. If we're playing a game of tiddlywinks, we still expect the Rangers to win. But there's got to be a level of pragmatism with friendlies. All right, it's going to be the first time the players are going to play together. All right, the TNS game, there was a lot of the kids playing. That would have just been a bounce game. Get them running. Get some minutes in the legs is what they say. And it's going to be the exact same with Bruges. What he's going to be doing is setting up how he wants to play, and it's going to be the first time the players are going to be doing it. Not in a competitive environment, but against another team. So there's going to be those teething problems, and that's where you want to see them. That's where they'll be accepted. So I don't really care about the result against Club Brugge. Obviously, I'd want them to win and to win comfortably, but am I going to come away from it if we scalp them 3-0, going to think, right, we're definitely going to win the league because we've played a friendly against Club Brugge? No. But at the same time, if we get beat, I'm also going to think it's really our first game. We haven't even got all our players in the door. It's been 2 weeks that Martin's trying to implement his football and style. It's going to take a bit of time. And I think that's what the fans need. Well, a majority of fans will realise that as well. There will be the odd few that'll be like, we should be beating that mob. But that's what friendlies are for. It's seeing who can play in what position. There might be players doing things that they've not done before, asked to do things in a different position. Probably Tav at centre back, what I'm going to be looking for personally. But that's really what I think the fans are going to need to take away from it, and hopefully they will. If they do, absolutely come away and tear Club Brugge 5-0, there will be fans who will go away positive. They'll be happy, and it might start to get that buy-in that he really needs from the fans. But here's hoping.
Absolutely. Colin, we were just talking about there, obviously, that you can't read too much into friendlies, and I don't think we should. That being said, I do recall, it takes me back to 2023, where we were really bad in the friendlies. If you remember, we played Olympiacos, we played Hoffenheim, and we played Hamburg, and Sam Lammers was the absolute standout footballer in that pre-season, and we thought we could be onto something here, and lo and behold, that perhaps didn't work. Can we obviously, we don't want, like I said, we don't want to take too much out of the friendlies, but if things go well and we start to see what Russell Martin's teams should look like, it can only be a good thing in it, and it's really got to be the way forward that you've got to take the positives. And to follow on for the point that was made earlier, is that Russell Martin will focus on the positives. We as a support, who are probably not known for focusing on the positives, we really need to, don't we? This is a completely fresh start for the support, for the whole club, for the whole ethos. We've got to take the positives, don't we?
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, as a fan base, we have been notorious and been, seeing the negatives. But to be fair, there have been plenty of negatives coming off the park and what we've been watching for the last couple of seasons. It's not been good. I really hope that we all try and find the positives from Sunday, Club Brugge. It's the first game. I've seen a lot of negativity already on social media. People saying, "What's the point going along to Ibrox on Sunday? We've only got 3 players in the door. What's going to be different?" Guys, get along and watch the team. This is going to be okay. There's only 3 guys in. There's probably going to be another couple over the next few days. This is going to be a totally new team in terms of how they're going to shape up, how we're going to try and play for the back, the principles of play. It is going to be interesting to watch. Get yourselves along and try and find the positives in every game. I think going back to what we were talking about just 5 minutes ago about Russell Martin needing to hit the ground running. It is interesting that our transfer policy seems to be moving back towards this kind of championship, Premier League loans kind of area. I mean, I thought we had moved away from that. Hamza Egeman last year, a couple of others coming in from various different markets through Niels Koppen. We seem to be moving back towards this kind of championship English-based players, which on one level is quite strange. But you look at the likes of Max Aarons last week and Joe Rothwell today. These are guys that know Russell Martin. These are guys who know the style of play. So I do just wonder if Russell Martin's recognizing the fact that this is a job where he's not going to get a honeymoon period, if there's such a thing. He is going to have to hit the ground running, and he will want as many guys in who understand the kind of style of play he wants to implement and hopefully hit the ground running. So, yeah, I think we need to, as a support, try and find the positives from Sunday. Hopefully, as Richard mentioned, it's a positive day in terms of performance and result. That would be absolutely ideal. But, it's going to be a run out for players. Ultimately, pre-season friendlies are about getting minutes in the legs, and I have no doubt that we'll probably see 8-9 changes at half-time. So we have to be realistic. But it's going to be a good test because they are a Champions League level team, and with the likes of Panathinaikos coming up, it's ideal. You don't want to be playing teams that you're going to go and hammer 6-7-0. You want teams that are going to put a challenge, that are going to press you, and let's see what we've got.
Absolutely, I could not put it better myself. If you're going along on Sunday, please enjoy it. We will wrap it up there for this evening. I know we're talking about delving into transfers. The boys will be back tomorrow with a show, and hopefully by then, all things going well, we've got a new player to talk about. We have obviously rumours today, or say rumours, that there has been information come out that there is a player on his way to Ibrox, and hopefully that's done in the next 24 hours. So the guys will be on tomorrow to talk about it. If you are obviously new to the show, obviously the gaffer's been putting out, if you're new to the show, what's taking you so long to join us over here at the Journal? We'll give you countless hours of content every single week, and it does not cost you an absolute penny. Please go out and check out all the stuff we've got on all the socials: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. We even stream on Twitch. We're on Twitch, guys. That's how woke we are. We're on Twitch. Check us out. We're everywhere. All the guys, all the podders, you can see we do tend to put our Twitter handles up as well. We put out as much content as we can for you. one of the best around. You'll not find more in-depth stuff on Rangers, especially over the summer, from the guys here at the Journal. And just first of all, I just want to thank the guys for coming on. Richard, thank you so much, my friend.
No problem. Pleasure as always, mate.
Colin, so man, thank you.
Thanks, Ross. Looking forward to seeing the team on Sunday. Hopefully, get a good performance and a win.
I think we all are. Doug, thank you, my man.
Yep, always a pleasure.
It is always a pleasure doing this with you. And of course, thank you so much to all the listeners for your comments, for your questions. Like I say, the guys will be back tomorrow, 9 o'clock. And just a wee shout out to our sponsors at Off to the Match I Go. If you scan the QR code in the bottom left, use the code at Journal10. You will get 10% off your first order. Plenty of top tier Rangers memorabilia on there if you're looking for a gift for a loved one. Like I say, thank you so much again for all your comments, your questions. Please subscribe, like it if you like what you see. And of course, remember that every night is your Rangers Journal night, and we'll talk to you again very, very soon. Good night.